Hi there, we'll get started in just a moment. Hi there, we'll get started in just another minute. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Ariel Eck, and I lead B2B marketing here at Foursquare. We're excited to share more about what you can expect this back-to-school shopping season. We'll explore how you can derive powerful consumer insights by enriching location data with app usage data from Flip, informing strategies for back-to-school shopping season, this holiday season, and beyond. Foursquare is the leading cloud-based location technology platform. A pioneer in geolocation, Foursquare's tech stack harnesses the power of places and movement to improve customer experiences and drive better business outcomes. I'm joined here today by Emily Owaney, who leads our consumer insights team here at Foursquare, along with Jason Chung, partner insights lead at Flip. Flip is a technology platform that is reinventing the way people plan their weekly shopping trip. Over 90% of retailers and some of the largest brands and digital publishers in North America use Flip to curate and distribute digital savings content to millions of highly engaged shoppers every day. Flip's mission is to deliver a full end-to-end ad tech platform that is focused on curating and distributing digital circulars to every household in North America. This is called Flip's Shopper Consideration Platform. Flip believes the digital weekly ad is a shopping experience that drives superior ROI for retailers and CPGs, while also providing real value to shoppers. Flip works with Foursquare to surface relevant deals to help end consumers save money and to surface location-based analytics for Flip's B2B partners. We're excited to have experts from both teams here today to talk about some of the recent trends of consumer behavior and what marketers need to know this back-to-school shopping season. We also encourage you to check out the full research report that we conducted together, which is available in the handout section of the webinar. Now we'll dive in. So you recently released a joint report studying consumer behavior around back to school. So what were some of the key findings? Maybe we'll start with Emily.
Yeah, so there were certainly a ton of rich insights and learnings that we gleaned from our analysis, especially in looking at the real world behavior of Flip users matched within our panel. But some of the major points that stood out to us first was that back to school shopping starts earlier than we might expect it to. Our data revealed that retailers start to see more traffic than usual in the last weekend of July, and traffic typically peaks in mid-August. And based on our survey data, we found that 42% of respondents are planning to start at some point this month in July. 38% are holding out to start until August, but 17% had already started as early as June. Second, we found that retailers will need to consider 3 different types of shopping audiences during the back to school season. Our survey showed that there was a fairly even split in self-reported intentions, suggesting that economic circumstances, along with other factors, are really contributing to a divide in shoppers' motivations and strategies for the back-to-school season. For example, we saw that 34% of shoppers intend to get all of their shopping done in a single outing while visiting multiple retailers. Another 34% planned to get it done with a one-and-done approach by visiting a single retailer and getting it all done in a single shopping trip. And the remaining 32% plan on making multiple trips based on deals to different retailers. And that further emphasizes the importance of price and value amongst today's shoppers as inflation continues to rise. Third, less than 8% of surveyed consumers plan to shop exclusively online for back to school. We found that over 65% of Americans will be shopping both in-store and online, which means that brick and mortar retailers are not only competing with direct competitors, but also with e-commerce giants like Amazon to win share of wallet for back to school. Just last week, we saw that many brands, including Target and Bed Bath & Beyond, had already started promoting online in-store promotions for back to school essentials ahead of Amazon Prime Day. And lastly, we learned that shopping patterns have evolved based on changes in consumers' work and home life routines this past year. During the height of the pandemic, we saw that a lot of retailers were seeing a notable increase in visits that were occurring throughout the day, as opposed to happening before and after typical work hours. We saw that foot traffic to offices has increased by 12% within the past 12 months. And we know that as more Americans are returning to offices more regularly, we're going to start seeing a decrease in this afternoon visitation and an uptick in evening foot traffic as consumers are commuting home from work. And we've already started to see that in last year's back to school foot traffic data. So we suspect that will continue for this season and beyond, looking ahead to the holiday season as well.
Jason, any key findings you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing we noticed, and Emily touched on this a little bit earlier as well, is that value is really top of mind for all shoppers this year, given everything that's going on with inflation and rising prices. And as a result, shoppers are increasingly looking for ways to save, through coupons, promotional offers, any deals and savings that they might see in their weekly circulars for retailers. We saw that discounts and best prices were by far the main reasons why consumers were, looking for when they're planning to shop for back to school. Through our collaboration with Foursquare, we were able to really understand how our in-app activity translates into real-world behaviors. And one key finding that we saw was that shoppers who read a circular in our app, indicating that they're looking for any deals or savings, were much more likely to visit a retailer in real life during last year's back-to-school season. And with value being top of mind, we expect this to continue even more into this season. One specific example I want to point out is, shoppers were up to 50% more likely to make a store visit after reading a circular on our Flip app compared to the average US consumer.
Wow. So how did people's in-app activity really translate to action? So which in-app behaviors are the best predictors of real-world behavior?
Yeah, for sure. So on our app, users typically engage in two ways. So one is that they are searching for specific items or products that they're interested in, or they're just browsing through circulars for retailers that are within their area, looking for really deals and savings that might catch their eye. We typically see that while search is a very strong indicator of shoppers' demands and their interests, it doesn't always translate into real world behaviors, just because maybe the items that they're looking for aren't on promotion, or maybe the promotion just isn't really appealing for them. On the other hand, we see that when users are browsing through our app and they're opening a circular to read, or they're clicking on specific deals or promotions within the circular, to save them for later, that's a much stronger, shows much stronger purchase intent and is a much stronger predictor of real life behavior. So an example of this is we saw that through working with Foursquare, 43% of our users visited a wholesale club during back to school last year. But we noticed that of users actually opened a wholesale club circular and read it, and we're looking for deals and savings, 63% ended up visiting a wholesale club, and that's a 50% increase from just the general users that weren't reading the circular beforehand.
Wow. That's really great to see how the data can really prove out perhaps what you might have hypothesized. Emily, anything you want to add there in terms of how in-app behavior predicts real-world behavior?
Yeah, I would just add that we found that Flip users in general are more likely to visit certain retailers in real life, regardless of their in-app activity, compared to what we saw of US consumers overall. So for example, during last year's back to school season, 77% of Flip users made at least one trip to a big box store. But we saw that only 73% of US consumers overall made that same trip. So just by nature of being a user and having the app downloaded, this audience is already more likely to visit certain retail stores in person just by wanting to have access to deals and discounts when it comes to shopping in stores.
That's great. I love how you're able to sort of help Flip understand who their users are and how they're different than the general population with our data. That's really cool. Was there anything particularly surprising that you uncovered in the research?
Definitely. So while office supply retailers are definitely, competing with big box, wholesale, and other retail categories for share of wallet, our report revealed several lesser known opportunities for office supply retailers to capitalize on specifically during the back to school season. For one, we found that office supply retailers typically see the biggest seasonal uptick of any retail category, including big box and drugstores. And they also see the highest share of weekday traffic occurring between Monday through Friday of any retailer during that time of year. Most retailers rely largely on weekend visitation, but office supply really does have an opportunity to win with early weekday shoppers. Second, we found that Labor Day weekend presents a really big opportunity for office supply to win with last minute back to school shoppers, especially in parts of the country where students might be returning to classrooms a little bit later than in other parts of the country. So office supply retailers saw the biggest uptick in Labor Day foot traffic of any retail category last year, while apparel and department stores actually saw less traffic than usual during that holiday weekend. And then the third point for that is that office supply shoppers are more likely to remain loyal to a single office supply chain when it comes to back to school shopping. So less than 8% of Staples, OfficeMax, and Office Depot shoppers had visited a direct competitor during last year's back to school season. Meanwhile, 39% of Walmart shoppers visited a Target and 77% of Target shoppers visited a Walmart. So we're seeing a much bigger overlap between different category retailers than we are amongst office supply shoppers. And the last piece is that we were really surprised to learn that consumer loyalty is already shifting from a focus on convenience and safety to value and experience. So amidst rising inflation and supply chain issues, we've seen an increase in the average number of distinct chains that shoppers are visiting. So more specifically, shoppers who had visited 3 retail stores on average during the 2020 back to school season, that increased up to 5 stores on average amongst 2021 back to school shoppers. So we're seeing an increased willingness to visit direct competitors in order to either shop the best prices, find the best value, or even find in-stock items amidst issues with supply chain. We also saw that 62% of surveyed Americans claim that discounts and sales are the top consideration when they're determining where to shop. But less than 30% cited convenience as a top consideration. So beyond just the back to school season, we would expect that behavior like this will sustain through the holidays as well, and that shoppers are motivated to visit competitors, but they're also motivated to potentially switch brands to more affordable alternatives amidst rising prices. Salesforce recently released a report, for example, that estimated that half of global shoppers will switch brands during the holiday season due to pricing.
Wow, that's really interesting to see the real impact of inflation here in supply chain. Jason, how about you? Anything surprising that you found in the study?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add on to a lot of what Emily said. Here at Flip, we also notice a lot of these similar trends and behaviors in pre-shop behavior as well. Not only are consumers changing how they shop in store and visit stores. They're also shopping how they research for stores beforehand as a direct result of inflation. So one thing we noticed, and tying it into what Emily mentioned about brand loyalty, is that we saw that searches and demand for private label is increasing significantly, this year compared to last year, and that is as a direct result of these rising prices that consumers are facing. And we really expect this to carry into back to school this season as well. Another thing that Emily mentioned is shoppers are looking to shop among more stores this year and really looking to increase the number of visits that they're making to these retailers. And again, we're seeing this in pre-shop behavior as well. Shoppers are researching and reading more and more circulars before they actually end up making a trip in store. We saw that shoppers who read more than 3 circulars a week increased by 10% compared to last year, as consumers are looking for more and better deals and savings.
Interesting. And so how else would you expect things like inflation and supply chain to influence behavior this year in terms of the most recent data we're having?
Yeah, so given that our back to school analysis is based entirely on foot traffic data from the past 2 back to school seasons, and inflation is much more prevalent today than it was a year or 2 years prior, we've continued to monitor those foot traffic patterns in more recent months to form a better understanding of how consumer behavior is evolving in real time. So first and foremost, we're seeing that value has become the most influential factor in determining where people shop. We're seeing that consumers are starting to cut back on non-essential purchases like home goods, furniture, apparel, and electronics. Our data shows that there was a 5 to 10% decrease in visitation to all of these categories over the past 12 months. We also saw that in contrast, wholesale clubs like Sam's Club or Costco are gaining popularity amongst these cost-conscious shoppers. So these stores offer members an opportunity to save money while buying everyday essentials in bulk. They also offer exclusive discounts on non-essential purchases like furniture, electronic, jewelry, and appliances, where consumers are cutting back on foot traffic. And then we also see that consumers are getting thrifty. So secondhand retailers have maintained fairly consistent foot traffic levels over the past year, while retailers that specialize in selling new apparel and accessories like boutiques and department stores have actually seen a decline in foot traffic over that same period of time by about 11 to 15%.
Wow, that's super interesting. So as you mentioned, our back to school report, it's based more on what we were seeing last year. And so it's great that we're also looking at what's going on more recently in the recent weeks and months. And so coming soon will be another report as well about the impact of inflation and what we're seeing there. And so excited to share that very soon as well. So which particular chains and categories are poised to succeed this year?
Yeah, so big box is the usual suspect, and amidst rising inflation, I think we'll continue to see big box retailers thrive during the back to school shopping and beyond. And with this year-over-year decline that we're seeing in foot traffic to specialty stores like electronics, apparel, home furniture, I think big box retailers can capitalize on this opportunity to influence impulse purchases amongst shoppers who are already visiting for everyday essentials. And then for the reasons we mentioned earlier on, I think office supply retailers are also poised for success over the next few months, just relative to how they perform the rest of the year, and especially during Labor Day weekend.
Jason, which chains and categories rise to the top for you?
Yeah, so one thing that really sticks up for us is, brands and retailers are offering deals, discounts, and promotions are definitely going to be ones that are poised for success this year, really tying in what we mentioned previously about value being top of mind for consumers. Shoppers who are looking for opportunities to save while shopping for back to school will be very interested in these chains. Additionally, I do want to point out that with the return of in-person schooling, we expect demand for office supply retailers, like Emily mentioned, to increase. And on the flip side, we would expect electronics retailers to experience a drop in demand compared to what they saw within the past few years as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic and remote schooling over the past few years, combined with an influx of cash for consumers, through the stimulus checks, really resulted in a surge of electronic purchases recently. And these are relatively low frequency items. People are only shopping for laptops every 5 years, keyboards and monitors very infrequently as well. So with the recent surge as a result of the pandemic, we expect this industry to enter a little bit of a cooling period this season, and for demand for electronics to decrease compared to the past 2 years this back to school season.
So, what trends are you keeping an eye on in the coming months, and how do you think things will continue to evolve and shift?
So first, we think inflation will continue to influence priorities and preferences amongst shoppers, which will ultimately reshape customer loyalty. So for many shoppers, value and experience will overtake convenience as a top influential factor amidst rising prices. Our survey data, for example, showed that discount and sales were the top consideration amongst back to school shoppers last year as well as this year. And consumers have already reported switching to generic products in place of brand name products to help cut costs. Beyond back to school, we would expect to see related changes in this behavior, such as how far shoppers are willing to travel and also how often they're visiting certain retailers as prices continue to rise. Second, we think that shoppers are increasingly visiting a wide variety of retail brands within a given category, meaning they're already starting to branch out and visit direct competitors more than usual. So this behavior was already apparent in what we saw of last year's back to school season, and with inflation even more persistent today, we're seeing, it's its fastest pace in 40 years, and we expect that this trend will continue throughout the holidays and well beyond that. And third, we suspect that retail foot traffic will pick up earlier than usual for major tentpoles. So we saw that 17% of back to school shoppers had already planned to start as early as June this year, and we anticipate that holiday shoppers will be visiting retailers even earlier than usual to avoid those higher price hikes later in the season.
Any trends you're keeping an eye on, Jason?
Yeah, I was going to say, on our side, we also agree, and we see that inflation is probably going to be top of mind for most consumers in the next coming months and into the back to school season. And a lot of the trends that Emily pointed out that you saw through store visits are also reflected in consumers' behavior in our app as well. So an example of this is with the shifting brand loyalty. We're really seeing searches for top and premium brand names decrease while searches for generic products increase. An example of this is, year to date, we're seeing that the searches for a top laundry detergent brand has decreased by 70%, whereas the term laundry detergent by itself is increasing by 170% year over year. And that's really indicating that consumers are willing to trade down from those premium brands to generic products in order to kind of save money, with rising prices really top of mind for them. And similarly, we're also seeing consumers engage in more cross-shop, or in our case, more cross-readership activity as consumers compare circulars through direct competitors in order to look for the best deals and savings that they can.
And what about more complex behaviors that we've seen rising in popularity since the pandemic, such as buy online, pick up in store, and curbside pickup? How are we seeing retailers handling those types of behaviors? Do we expect that to continue?
Yeah, so it's become clear that many shoppers will continue to buy online and pick up in store. During the last back to school season, 42% of total visits to retail stores lasted less than 15 minutes. And 67% of the consumers that we surveyed for this year's back to school season planned to shop both online and in person. So we're seeing shorter than average dwell times amongst in-store shoppers, and this just further reinforces that the option to buy online, pick up in stores is preferred by many shoppers, especially as we see that package theft activity is continuing to pick up across America, especially more so around the holidays. So knowing this, it's essential that businesses have a complete and consistent view of their customers' journey across all channels and platforms, which is why we actually came out with a new feature called closed loop attribution, which brands can now effectively monitor their customers' path to purchase and measure lift for click to collect and digital conversion campaigns.
Wow, yeah, that new feature is really exciting to help marketers measure that type of behavior given the rise of it in recent years. All right, thank you so much for the conversation today. I think now we're going to open it up to any questions from the audience. So please feel free to drop any questions that you may have for our expert panelists here into the chat of the webinar. Let's see. We'll give everyone a moment to ask any questions and see what comes in. All right. And one more reminder to check out the full report that we conducted together in the handout section of the webinar. Really a robust research there that I recommend for everyone today, for retailers and for brands, as well as advertising agencies. Lots of great learnings there to leverage. Right, we do have one question so far, which is, how are you working with retailers to maximize success this season?
Yeah, so I can take that one first. There are a number of ways in which we work with brands and marketers to capitalize on these learnings. First, we're here to help brands make sense of where people are moving to inform better business decisions, whether that relates to predicting consumer trends, forecasting demand, or even determining optimal site locations. Second, we can help brands and marketers reach new customers and align with the right moments of consideration through our different targeting solutions. So in the case of back to school, we can build highly customized and scalable audience segments based on these learnings that can be activated within a DSP or across various social channels. And then lastly, our MRC accredited attribution product allows brands to monitor how cross-platform advertising is driving real-world visitation with the option to optimize and maximize investments in real time.
Awesome. And from Flip side, so Flip is really a key solution for brands and retailers to drive consideration of their stores and platforms and products during the back to school season. So we know that a lot of shoppers already know what they want or what they need to buy, whether it's through making lists or through their own research, but a lot of them don't know. What they don't know is where to buy it, where the best deals are, how they can be the most efficient in their shopping. And this is where Flip's end-to-end platform, really allows retailers and brands to help these shoppers plan their trips by really curating and distributing digital savings content like the weekly circular that helps communicate product, price, promotions, while also driving larger baskets. Flip can also help retailers and brands create digital merchandising content from scratch if they don't have something existing. And Flip helps get this content out to millions of highly engaged shoppers, across our distribution network, whether it be through our app or through our publisher partnerships as well.
Excellent. Lots of great ways in which everyone can work with both of you. The next question that came in is there any data on the types of shoppers that are going into stores this year in terms of demographics and income level, things like that?
Yeah, so based on this year's back to school shoppers, that's something we'll be able to analyze as soon as the season is complete, ahead of next year's back to school season. But based on what we saw last year, within the report that's linked in the handouts, we do cover shopper demographics. So looking at different types of parents who might be visiting or shopping for their students, whether they're millennial parents, Gen X parents, or even grandparents. We look at share of different types of category traffic amongst those audiences, see when certain audiences are more likely to visit stores, whether that's morning shopping or evening shopping. So there's a lot of different cuts of data included within the analysis that helps readers understand who these shoppers are and where to reach them.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think, not to give away what's in the report, but I think it was surprising to see that it was, younger parents that are still shopping in store. It's not necessarily just that younger people are digital natives and older people are IRL shoppers, right, Emily?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and younger audiences are also frequenting in-store locations more often than older shoppers too.
Maybe more impacted by the inflation. One final question is sort of what's next on the docket? You guys both focus on consumer research. So any other projects coming up that you want to give us a sneak preview of?
Yeah, so on our end, we're working on that inflation impact analysis I mentioned. So we're taking a closer look at how inflation in more recent months has impacted consumer behavior across a bunch of different categories. We've been looking at a lot of outside research that has been showing that people are cutting different costs, whether that's dining out, driving less often than usual, switching brands. So we're looking for correlations in our foot traffic data to make sense of what we're seeing. And we're also looking at how that behavior changes for different income levels. So looking at what lower, middle to high income consumers are doing to combat rising inflation in recent months and what that looks like relative to 12 months prior. So that should be out in the next couple of weeks. And then beyond that, we're also looking at how delivery services can leverage location data to better understand what consumers are ordering in different DMAs or cities across the country based on things like the time spent on site and how far they're willing to travel for different types of cuisine. So that'll also be available at some point in early August.
Excellent.
And on flip side, we also have a similar inflation report coming out as well. Inflation is very top of mind across consumers and retail partners, I'm sure. So we also have a similar report just looking at inflation's impact on consumers' behavior on our app and kind of how that translates into real world behaviors as well. Whether it be impact to retail store loyalty, to brand loyalty, to different behaviors and how they're changing as a result of inflation. And we also have many seasonal reports that come out, the next big one being Black Friday, and just helping plan for that. And all of these are posted kind of within Flip's social media and our blogs as well.
Excellent. Well, definitely recommend everyone in the audience to check out those resources. And thank you so much for joining us. I think we're just about out of time. Thank you to both of our panelists, and please feel free to reach out, visit both of our websites to contact us for more information. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.